From Sports Illustrated, with Chris Paul declined his $44.2 million player option to guarantee the trade to a championship contender, quote, no chance. That's not happening. Nope.
Chris Paul became the head of the NBA Players Association in order to maximize his money, and now people are saying, well, what if he gives it up now?
Chris Paul ain't never sounded more like the rest of us than he was saying, I'm not turning down $40 million. What are you, high?
Up first is Ben Simmons. For all we talk about Ben's non-existent jumper, my large adult son just had 34 points, 12 rebounds, 12 assists, and 5 steals last night in a 117-111 win over the Nets. And that stat line doesn't even really do justice to his defense, as Brooklyn turned the ball over 10 times in the fourth quarter. The Sixers have now won 4 straight with Joel Embiid out with that busted finger. But, Bo, is this the sort of performance from Ben Simmons that we can regularly expect?
I mean, no, that's ridiculous. But was it a very strong performance? Yes. And this idea that you floated out, the idea of him being a point center, I'm not all the way on board with that, but we saw glimpses of it. The biggest thing we saw glimpses of was an aggressive Ben Simmons on offense, a guy that's actually trying to impose his will upon people, which is something we don't see very often. The other thing we saw in this game that we know damn well we ain't going to see very much is Ben Simmons going 10 for 14 from the free throw line, right? The holdups in Simmons' games are about his passivity and when it occurs. It partially occurs because he cannot shoot free throws. It also occurs because, for whatever reason, he is petrified of shooting jump shots. But at his best, the dude can guard 4 positions at an elite level, and we know what his talents are. That's why it's so frustrating when he's out here acting like a sucker and being afraid to shoot.
He is an alien with perhaps a crippling fear of shooting, but what I hope in all of this is that we don't just run to the next level of the argument, which is, therefore, Joel Embiid needs to go. Because Bomani, Ben Simmons, what he showed last night, right? A lot of it was not just the point center stuff. It was put him with a guard. Let him be the guy setting picks and pick and rolls. Let him be the guy who can use all of his talents on the floor, which just means get another guard worth anything next to him, because that guard should also be helping Joel Embiid do the same thing.
But how can you maximize his talents with a 7'2", 275 dude down there on the block? The spacing of this doesn't make sense if Simmons isn't going to be a guy that can stretch the defense himself. We're in year 3 on this experiment with them, right? Like, it's not like somebody just looked at it for a couple of games and was like, oh, this doesn't work. There are real questions as to whether or not their games complement each other and to whether or not the greatest return on either and combined is having them. Because it's not like, okay, if you trade one of them, all of a sudden you just have the hole on the roster. Presumably, you're getting some things back that maybe could be the stuff that you're talking about working around. I don't think they're a good fit with each other. I haven't thought they're a good fit with each other. And at the end of the year, I think the Sixers are going to have a real decision about whether or not these two together is the best way to maximize a 12-man roster.
So if I am Ben Simmons' agent or Joel Embiid's agent, I listen to that and I am nodding my head, because individually, either of these guys should flourish more than they are together. I agree with the fit and the awkwardness of that. But the thing about the experiment has been a success so far. They became, one bounce away last year from beating the NBA champions?
One bounce away from getting out of the second round of the playoffs. Put it in the right terms, because the thing about this is, the aggregate numbers might be great, but they're still going to get to the playoffs, and they're going to be stuck out there trying to find somebody to get a shot, and they're going to be in a place where Ben Simmons can't get it, and Ben Simmons can't help anybody else get it.
I just can't give away Joel right now. I can't.
You can trade Simmons. Problem solved. Now, James Harden. The Rockets blew a 15-point lead in the last 7 minutes of their 112-107 loss to the Thunder Monday. Houston shot 9 for 45 from 3, and Harden was 1 for 17. That was the second time in a week's time where Harden went 1 for 17 from 3. Oh, and the Rockets have lost 4 straight and 5 of 6. Pablo, what's going on here?
I think it's pretty simple, and there are other levels to get to with the Rockets, like the dynamic between these two guys, but James Harden just isn't doing the thing that James Harden must do at the very minimum, which is making 3-pointers. And it's not just that he's missing 3-pointers, he is airballing in this game more threes than he made. So, what is happening? I think it's a James Harden problem that I hope is temporary.
But there's a macro problem, which is once it becomes clear that James Harden can't buy a bucket, you guys got plan B, right? Because plan A is James Harden. Go get your own shot. Plan B is Russell Westbrook. Maybe you go get your own shot. There's got to be a way for them to get shots that are easier, right? Every shot they seem to take is really hard. You got to be really dedicated to just be like, you know what? I'm going to go out here and get a shot. That's right. Eric Gordon come out here and be like, I can shoot. I used to be a big-time recruit. And he goes out there and gets his shots. But until something happens in that offense that makes it possible to get easier shots for other people, then this is going to be a team that loses in the second round if they get that far.
Well, can we show the people the last possession of this game? Because this kind of encapsulated the dysfunction. Here is James Harden not having the confidence to do what he usually does. Dishes to Russell Westbrook. There's plan B. Whoa. And now what happened?
Hold on. Was the plan to dish to Russell Westbrook? Can we run that back again? Because it looks to me like the plan was to give it to P.J. Tucker, who has been standing by himself. I have no idea what he is doing right there. Like all the stuff that happened after he got the ball, it had to happen once he got there. Why were you ever in a place where the ball was coming in your direction at all? What are they doing? I'm sure they got plays. I just can't readily identify them.
And what's so confusing about that sequence, beyond the fact that Russell Westbrook did intercept that ball for P.J. Tucker, Russell Westbrook in this game and in the last game had taken 0 threes. We have all been yelling at Russell Westbrook, please stop doing this. But at the very end of the game, when it matters the most, the wiring kind of kicked back in and he was left doing that.
Once it was there, man, once he's got the ball, it's got to go up.
But let's turn to Delonte West. You may know the 36-year-old from his 9 years as a guard in the NBA. But West, who had previously discussed his struggles with bipolar disorder, is now back in the news because of 2 jarringly sad online videos. Now, we're only going to show you images from the videos because they're graphic. But in the first, West is repeatedly kicked and punched by an unidentified man in the middle of the highway. And in the second, taken sometime after the first, West is shirtless and handcuffed and yelling incoherently. Bo, all of this has ignited the latest conversation about mental illness in sports. But what, if anything, can the NBA itself do to help?
I mean, I guess all the things that anybody else could do to help that the NBA would wind up doing to help. My question is, why do we think that this is the NBA's responsibility to help under these circumstances? You can make an argument that the Players Association has a responsibility to Delonte West and they should be looking out for him. But in the end, I don't know what the league is supposed to do on this. Like, this is really terrible to see, and you wish the best for a dude, generally speaking, specifically somebody who is in this particular situation. But I am not sure who else's responsibility it is to care for this adult.
Yeah, it's a strange dynamic that we put responsibility on these leagues in a way that we don't for any other business. If you work at Walmart, Walmart is not necessarily trying to be pressured to both give mental health resources to their employees long after they stop working for them, and also they're not asked to do stuff like financial literacy. The obligations of these leagues, they seem to stem from a larger understanding that, wait a minute, don't they owe it to their former employees to do this? But, Bomani, what's weird to me in all of this is that it feels like this is the NBA mostly responding to a PR crisis because the video is why we're here. Those 2 videos are why we're here. It's the fact that they're viral and graphic because there are headlines otherwise that we hear about all the time that don't result in this kind of conversation.
But hold on. To be fair to them, though, we don't know what they do and don't do when we're not paying attention. By the same token, this is something we're paying attention to because there is a video. I got no idea what phone calls they get that don't wind up in videos and what steps are then taken after the fact, right? So, like, are they, like, I don't even think it's interesting. Yeah, it's a PR crisis. That's why they have to jump on because people are out here. So Phil Martelli, former coach at St. Joe's, is coming out and we're like, yo, we're going to try to get Delonte West some help. But in the end, Delonte West is the one that's ultimately responsible for the help. Like, I've seen people make the idea where the NBA should make available all these mental health resources. These resources are available to people who are not in the NBA also. I don't think they have to be the ones to do this. I get why they talk about this as being a family and as a brotherhood. And so everybody wants to say that they care. But in the end, this is going to wind up coming back on this dude. I'm not saying this in some kind of bootstrap sort of way. That's just the reality of it.
No, what's interesting to me here is that we would love to see a guy get help, but we're really doing this because he's in front of our faces and making us feel very sad. As a systematic issue, there are things and proposals and policy recommendations that specifically the union should get into. But why is there this outcry? It's because we are depressed by seeing how sad and messed up Delonte West is. All of which is to say a human impulse, but if there's a larger policy conversation, it should be had also.
All right, coming up next, will Derek Jeter be voted into the Hall of Fame unanimously?
How do you judge someone? Not by what they say, by what they do. We're a nation of doers. What's Mike Bloomberg about? Doing things. A middle-class kid worked his way through college, an entrepreneur. Bloomberg built a global news and information business from scratch. Mayor of a diverse, progressive city, Mike Bloomberg rebuilt after 9/11, creating nearly 500,000 jobs, improving health care and public schools. Now he's running for president, and Mike's the change we need. From chaos to steady leadership, from lies to someone who believes in facts and data, from divisiveness to someone who builds teams, nurtures good ideas, and holds himself accountable for results. Mike Bloomberg knows how to lead, to build, to deliver, to do. He'll win and unite this country. Mike will get things done.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, candidate for president, and I approve this message because we need to deliver on the promise of the American dream. Paid for by Mike Bloomberg 2020.
High Noon is coming to you from above the Heineken River Deck at Pier 17.
Press I'm just standing like Michael Jackson. First topic, Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan talked about his last Super Bowl appearance, the one where the Falcons blew a 28-3 lead, and he said, quote, the whole narrative of if I would have just ran it, we would have won. I know that wasn't the case. You in on Shanahan? With Shanahan on that?
I am not all the way in on this because I feel like it was a little bit more complex than that. But I get why Kyle Shanahan is saying this, man. Like, I get why he is saying this. Number one, because everyone made fun of him for it. And number two, he's kind of living that out right now with the 49ers. They are running the ball over and over again, I assume because of this.
He blew the Super Bowl, man. Like, he's just going to have to live with that. If he wants to say that the narrative is that they would have won the game, and that's wrong, tell me why that's wrong. Because I watched that sack that Matt Ryan took late. We watched you not eat up the clock while you had that big old lead. So just explain to people what it is that they've got wrong, because they reasonably believe if you'd have run a little more clock, they wouldn't have had time to come back on you. Glad I'm off that narcotic.
Allegedly. Next topic, Jaylen Brown. Brown absolutely yammed it on LeBron last night in a Celtics rout of the Lakers, so let's watch. Oh. You in on Brown's dunk being a bigger deal than the Celtics winning the game?
Yeah, pretty much. And hey, man, it was a big win for Boston, celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday the right way. He went to graduate school up there. I'm just looking at LeBron, and I mean, getting yammed on, I've spent my whole life avoiding it. This just reminds me, they have legislated the hard foul out of basketball, because that was a good time right there for a forearm shiver.
LeBron James, after the game, was asked if he felt that this was personal, and he said, no, why would I take it personally? But after the game also, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were like measuring which of their dunks on LeBron was better. So maybe not personal to you, but absolutely it is for them.
Up next, Derek Jeter. Major League Baseball's 2020 Hall of Fame class will be announced tonight. You in on Jeter getting voted into the Hall of Fame unanimously tonight?
I am not in on this as a rational baseball fan, but as an irrational Yankee fan who grew up basically being an altar server for the Yankees chaplain and asking for an autograph from Derek Jeter specifically, yes, I want him to get all of the awards, all of the roses while he can still smell them. 100% yes, give me that.
Here's the thing about this. The idea of him being a unanimous Hall of Famer is only ridiculous because they never really put anybody in unanimously before this Rivera thing. Babe Ruth didn't get in unanimously. Ty Cobb didn't. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, none of those guys got in unanimously. Everybody liked Mariano Rivera, really, because he ain't say that much. And so they're like, yeah, we'll do it for that guy. And this guy, honestly, also didn't say very much, and so they're going to do it for him. But the idea that either of them was so good that nobody could find a bad thing to say about him, how does this apply to these cats and not Mickey Mantle, for example?
Now to Derek King. Houston's former quarterback announced that he is transferring to Miami for his senior year. Are you in on that fit?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I was a little surprised that that's where he wound up going, because I would have thought he may have had some better options in places that he could go. But he is a talent, right? I will just say this. Playing in the AAC is not the same thing as playing in the ACC, despite all your jokes about that conference.
Yeah, the ACC saw Miami be pretty terrible last year. I think that's the fit here. They need offense. They were, I believe, 10th and 12th in scoring and in yards per game. And so this is a team that could use a quarterback like this guy. I'm just offended if I'm Houston and you're like, really? Miami? You didn't... Not even Arkansas. I could have understood that a little better.
Yeah, I'd be way more offended if you moved to Arkansas rather than moving to Miami if you're leaving me. Just a thought. Next, Derrick Rose. The Lakers and Sixers are among the teams that have expressed interest in trading for Rose, per Yahoo's Chris Haynes. You in on that?
I am kind of in on this because, man, I am desperate for a guard for the Philadelphia 76ers in specific. But I want a guy who can play defense and shoot from deep. And so Derrick Rose, unfortunately, yeah, I'm holding out for somebody better.
Who's that going to be? I mean, like, that's the question to ask you. Derrick Rose is averaging something like 34 points per 100 possessions. That's the highest scoring rate that he's had per 100 possessions since the MVP season. What the Sixers need, and I understand trying to get a little greedy, though I don't know who you think is going to be available at this time of year. He needs somebody that can get his own